So, as I've been playing through my game collection recently, as I am prone to do, I started realizing that there is a bit of a pattern as far as certain types of games that for some reason, whenever I come across them, they always click. Something in my brain just can't resist this combination of things, and one of those is medieval strategy, especially when it involves any kind of kingdom building or turn-based combat elements and things like that. And, I started thinking back, what was the first game that really got me into that genre? And that's when I ran across this floppy disk once again, which contains King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, or Court, developed by Brandon McMullen and Wesley Gray, and published by MVP Software in 1994 for MS-DOS PCs. This is one of the many shareware games that I got from an educational convention back in the mid-90s, and I picked this one mainly because I was studying medieval history in school. It was always a gamble buying things from these shareware vendors, since half the time you got the game on a disc with a sentence or two describing it and that was it. But when I got it home and installed the game, it was even more than I'd bargained for. As in, it didn't work. It would do nothing at the command prompt, maybe getting so far as the opening logo, but that was it. Fast forward a while and I found this, King Arthur's Court Deluxe, distributed by Essex Interactive Media in 1995. By the time this was in my hands, I had another PC, and finally I was able to play the game. Pretty uninspiring cover art though, but at least it actually has some screenshots to look at this time, so I won't complain. But I will complain that it doesn't come with a physical manual, so you have to print it out from a file on the CD, and man, talk about an in-depth set of documentation, covering everything from basic gameplay to resource management strategies to combat theory. Super useful stuff. Well, other than the parts where it talks about another game, Desert Storm Command, instead of King Arthur's Court. Whoops. Court Deluxe starts things off with a slideshow intro telling you its tale of Arthurian legend. King Arthur has fallen by the hand of the traitor Mordred, which means Britain has entered into the Dark Ages. Or it could just be because they forgot to pay their wax bill and all their candles were repossessed. At any rate, things get out of hand and everyone hates everything, so the former Knights of the Round Table all set to unite Britain under one king. Sure, there's the legend about Arthur returning with Excalibur one day, but it doesn't affect this game in the slightest, so instead, lay the smackdown on your former allies and effectively claim the throne yourself. The main menu then arrives to mainly tell you that you can look at the instructions, start a new game, or play a previous one. Starting a game presents you with several options, all of which are pretty key to how you'll fare during gameplay. The number of opponents and difficulty level is most important, ranging from page on the low end to knight on the high end. You then choose from one of 5 knights to play as, each of which has unique abilities and armor-clad facades. Oh, and voices. Don't forget those majestic voices.
God save England!
Right-clicking on buttons will tell you what they do, and you'll have an advisor that you can enable as well, which is great because some of this stuff is pretty vague at first. I'll be playing the Retail Deluxe version here, since the original game had 4 fewer buttons and less gameplay overall, so yeah. Screw shareware, give me more stuff! And while this may look slightly complicated, the goal is rather simple. Britain is split up into 18 territories, and it's your task to unite them all under one banner. The best banner. Your banner. Of course, the other 4 knights all have the same goal, and since peace and diplomacy is for pansies, that means you'll be battling for supremacy. Along the way, you'll be taxing the peasants, dealing with random disasters, laying siege to enemy castles, waging a war of attrition on the other armies, and holding occasional jousting contests. In other words, it's Defender of the Crown, Shareware Edition. And I've got to say, for a game that came out 8 years after the one it's so clearly mimicking, it doesn't do much to improve on the formula. In fact, CinemaWare's medieval strategy game was largely criticized for lacking in gameplay, so the fact that King Arthur's Court contains just about the same, if not less, well, it's not exactly a good sign. But let's assume for a moment that you're not familiar with Defender of the Crown. In fact, let's assume that you've never seen a game like this at all. That was me when I first played Court. And I have to say, once the gameplay clicked, its hooks were in deep and I could not stop until I beat the thing, which was about 40 minutes later, but I digress. King Arthur's Court was a game that may not have been terribly deep or even very pretty to look at, but man, if it wasn't engaging to play. For the short time it lasted, this had me thinking in strategic ways that my brain had never experienced when I first got it. Everything takes place in turns, so you have plenty of time to plan ahead and make sure you have the upper hand on your enemies. The basic idea is always the same. Every player starts off with one territory as their own, and each turn it's up to you as to whether or not you use it waging war or building up your army and defenses to prepare to take down more territories. It really is all about the land here, because the more land you own, the more peasants you can tax, and the more you can earn each turn to buy more units and upgrades. You'll also get a ton of space for lawn ornaments. Yeah, being a landowner, it's just nice. The gameplay is a constant cycle of the same basic thing, but every turn truly is unique. In fact, every game is unique, thanks to the randomized elements in play. You've got things like plagues, civil uprisings, church influence, and even witches casting spells on you, all of which affect your resources and abilities, and every time you start the game, your coat of arms is randomized as well. This not only determines how awesome your trademarked logo is, but affects your starting conditions, like what territory you end up with, the number of initial combat units, your beginning treasury, and bonus ability stats. Oh yeah, each knight has a set of stats assigned to them, meaning that everyone has strengths and weaknesses. These stats being strength, charisma, honor, and luck, which will all determine how effective you are at jousting, battle tactics, getting your vassals to obey, and just making good things happen. Most of the time you can just play it smart and get stuff done whatever your stats, but other times the randomness works against you to an insane degree. Battles especially tend to go any which way, relying on what seem to be totally off-the-wall dice rolls. In the beginning, most territories are neutral, and thus have nothing but peasants hanging around all merry-like. That is until you come along with your sword and your horses and your t-shirt that says "I hate peasants" and claim the land for yourself. Of course, this is randomized to a degree, so there is a chance that enough peasants will outnumber your army and kick you in the balls until you leave. Territories that are owned by another player will typically have some defenses built up, both in the form of a castle or a selection of units garrisoned there. Typically, whoever has the most units wins, but that's not always the case, otherwise the game would be far too simple. Sometimes you'll just all but lose, and you can retreat and limp away with your tail between your legs, losing honor in the process. Other times, you'll lose badly. Your entire army is wiped out, and you're forced to go all the way back to your home castle, not passing go or collecting $200. For this reason, it's a good idea to save frequently and always build more units each turn, then spending time stationing them in each of your territories. Not only does this provide some nearby bro backup for the next turn, but it also means that enemy armies can't just waltz in and claim territories that aren't defended, which they will always do the moment you turn your back. Of course, you can always make more troops with more money, and you can easily get more money by taxing your vassals a second time after your turn begins. This risks a civil uprising and you losing some honor, but hey, who needs respect when you got money? You can even summon Merlin to go and do some dirty deeds for dirt cheap, and this can slice the castle strength and troop levels of a chosen territory in half. Another way to claim territories is to win a jousting contest, which can be done once per turn. Like a Klingon leprechaun, you normally fight for honor and gold, but if you're a real baller, you can lay down the pink slips to your territory and whoever wins claims the land. While similar in idea, this plays a bit different to Defender of the Crown's jousting in that it's from a third-person perspective and is mainly down to your stats as well as the timing in lowering your lance. Hit your opponent hard enough to knock him off his horse and separate his head from his torso and make his lance float around. Ah, what an awesome feature, truly ahead of its time. Or maybe that's just a glitch, what do I know? Lastly, the game can end in the two ways you'd expect. Either you get wiped out and your home castle is destroyed, or you wipe everyone else out and your home castle stays there, doing nothing. Yeah, King Arthur's Court! What a decidedly okay game. Yeah, so it's not the greatest and can be beaten in less time than it takes me to get out of bed on a rainy morning, but I enjoyed it anyway. It owes a ton of gameplay to the likes of Warlords, Kingdoms of England, and of course Defender of the Crown, yet it's just one of those games from my childhood that I found fascinating, and through my ignorance I thought it was more unique than it actually was. But whatever, it directly led to me having an interest in more involved medieval war games and strategy games of all types, like Lords of the Realm and Crusader Kings 2. So for that, it has my gratitude. And if you're curious to check it out, it was released as freeware by MVP Software, so check out the download link in the video description, and why not try it out if you feel like losing a battle to some peasants before getting your castle burned down. And if this review did not lose a battle to your attention span, then you're probably in the right place. This channel is full of other similar things, because that's kind of what I do here. That's why I've got a channel, as well as a subscription option. Well, actually, that's YouTube's doing, but I think it's a good idea, especially if you would like to see more videos in the future. I do more of these every single week. You can also follow and interact with me on Twitter and Facebook, as well as support the show, not only here through YouTube on that little thingy up in the top left of the video, but on Patreon, which is probably a lot better because it gives you some other perks like being able to see videos earlier, getting signed floppy disks, and other cool stuff. And as always, thank you very much for watching.